My beloved child. Stop scrolling and remain here for a moment, because what you are about to hear carries the weight of a truth that has been trying to reach you through every unexplained feeling in your heart. Somewhere beneath the cold white lights of a hospital waiting room, the person your soul has never completely forgotten is sitting alone. Their hands are trembling. Their eyes are fixed upon an empty chair across from them, but in their mind, you are sitting there. They are speaking to you beneath their breath, although you cannot hear them. They are asking for something they once believed they would never need to ask from you. They are begging for your forgiveness, but not for the reason you may be imagining. Stay here, because before this night is over, something hidden between you will be uncovered, and the first secret is already closer than you think. The waiting room is almost silent, except for the faint hum of the lights and the distant sound of footsteps moving through the corridor. A clock hangs above a doorway, but your soulmate has stopped watching its hands. Time has lost its meaning to them. Every passing minute feels like a mirror showing them the moments they wasted, the words they withheld, and the love they tried to bury beneath pride. They have looked at their phone more than once. Your name is not on the screen, yet it is the only name moving through their mind. They have opened a message meant for you, written several lines, erased them, and begun again. What they need to say cannot be contained in a few sentences. It is tied to a choice they made long ago, a choice they were certain would protect everyone. Tonight, they have discovered that it protected no one. You may be wondering who is behind the closed hospital doors and why this moment has awakened such desperation inside them. Do not rush ahead. That answer is coming, but another truth must be revealed first. Your soulmate did not arrive at the hospital expecting to think about you. They came carrying an entirely different fear. Yet the instant they sat in that chair, a memory of you returned with such force that they could no longer escape it. They remembered the last time you looked at them and waited for honesty. You did not demand perfection. You did not ask them to promise you a future they could not yet understand. You only needed them to tell you what was real. But they remained silent, and their silence wounded you more deeply than any spoken rejection could have done. They told themselves that you would recover. They believed you would eventually forget the strange bond between you and find someone whose heart was easier to understand. They tried to convince themselves that stepping away was an act of mercy. But heaven saw what happened after they turned from you. Their steps became heavier. Their laughter changed. They entered crowded rooms and still felt the loneliness of the place where your presence used to be. Even when they seemed calm, they carried an invisible conversation with you everywhere they went. There were nights when they almost reached out, only to place their phone face down and whisper that it was too late. Tonight, in that waiting room, the excuse of "too late" has begun to collapse, because the person beyond that closed door has just revealed what really kept you apart. Pause here and feel the seriousness of this moment. Your soulmate is not asking to be rescued from the consequences of their choices. For the first time, they are seeing those choices without excuses. They remember every occasion when they allowed another voice to speak louder than their own heart. They remember the warnings, the doubts, and the opinions of people who never understood what existed between you. Someone told them that loving you would complicate their life. Someone suggested that your connection was only a passing emotion. Someone persuaded them that distance would provide clarity. Yet distance brought no clarity. It only revealed how rare your presence had been. The more they tried to replace what they felt, the more unmistakable it became. But there is something they still do not know. one of the voices they trusted was hiding a personal reason for separating you. That is why this hospital corridor matters. Earlier tonight, your soulmate received a call they never expected. The caller's voice was hurried but controlled, asking them to come immediately. No explanation was given beyond the words, "There is something you need to hear." They drove beneath a darkening sky with a pressure in their chest that seemed to grow at every turn. They thought the urgency concerned only the person who had been admitted. They did not know your name had already been spoken in that hospital room. They did not know an old secret had surfaced while someone stood between fear and regret. By the time your soulmate entered the building, a folded envelope was resting on the table beside the hospital bed, an envelope connected to you. Your soulmate has not yet seen everything inside it. That moment is still waiting. What they have heard is only the beginning, but it was enough to break through the wall they built around their heart. The person in that room is someone whose approval once mattered greatly to them, someone they trusted to recognize what was best for their future. Years of respect gave this person power over decisions they never should have controlled. When your connection began to deepen, this person noticed the change in your soulmate. They saw how your name softened their expression. They saw them become more hopeful, more courageous, and more willing to imagine a life beyond old expectations. Instead of celebrating that change, they became afraid of losing their influence. They did not openly command your soulmate to abandon you. Their interference was far more subtle. They asked questions designed to create doubt. They repeated small misunderstandings until they appeared like serious warnings. They interpreted your quietness as indifference and your boundaries as rejection. Every time your soulmate defended you, this person stepped back, smiled gently, and claimed they were only concerned. That is how the separation began, not with one dramatic lie, but with many carefully placed shadows. Your soulmate listened because they believed concern was the same as wisdom. Tonight, they have discovered that some of those shadows were deliberately created, and this realization is why tears are falling onto their clasped hands. Stay until the end of this message, because the deepest confession has not yet been made. There is a reason your soulmate keeps looking toward the main entrance. Some part of them is hoping you will walk through those doors without being called. They know that is unlikely, yet they cannot stop imagining it. They picture you entering, finding them in that chair, and asking what happened. In their imagination, they do not defend themselves. They do not pretend to be strong. They stand, look directly into your eyes, and tell you everything. But then the vision changes. They see the hurt you carried because of them, and they become afraid that their truth has arrived too late to matter. Listen carefully, forgiveness does not mean pretending that nothing happened. It does not require you to abandon wisdom, reopen every door, or ignore the boundaries that protected your peace. Even in this fictional revelation, your heart still has a choice. Your soulmate understands that now. They are not begging heaven to force you back into their arms. Their prayer is different. They are asking for one honest chance to admit what they did, to reveal what was hidden, and to accept whatever decision you make afterward. That change matters, because earlier they wanted relief from their guilt. Tonight, they want to become worthy of truth, even if the truth costs them the future they desire. A few minutes ago, a nurse stepped into the waiting room and quietly spoke their name. Your soulmate rose so quickly that the phone slipped from their hand. The nurse did not bring the final news they feared. Instead, she said the patient was conscious and asking to see them alone. Your soulmate followed her through a corridor that seemed far longer than it was. With every step, memories of you returned. Your voice, your patience, the moment you tried to explain that something felt wrong, and the sadness in your eyes when they did not believe you. They entered the room expecting an update about a medical condition. What they received was a confession. The person in the bed looked older than your soulmate remembered. Fear had stripped away the authority they once carried. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Then the patient pointed toward the folded envelope beside the bed and said, "I should have given this to you a long time ago." Your soulmate did not understand. They looked at the envelope, then back at the person whose opinion had shaped so much of their life. A name was written across the front. It was your name. Not a similar name, not a vague reference, but yours. In that instant, the room seemed to tilt beneath them. Your soulmate asked how the envelope had come into their possession. The answer did not arrive immediately. The patient closed their eyes, as though gathering the courage to cross a line that could never be uncrossed. Then they admitted that a message from you had been intercepted before it ever reached your soulmate. It was sent during the season when misunderstandings were pulling you apart. You believed your words had been received and ignored. Your soulmate believed you had chosen silence. Both of you suffered beneath conclusions built upon something that never happened. The letter remained hidden while weeks became months, and uncertainty hardened into distance. That is the first major truth being revealed tonight. Your soulmate did not knowingly reject the message you sent from your heart. They never saw it. But do not mistake this for complete innocence. Even without the letter, they felt that something was unfinished. They sensed that your silence did not match the person they knew. They could have asked. They could have come to you directly. They could have trusted the sincerity they had witnessed with their own eyes. Instead, they accepted a convenient explanation because confronting the truth required courage they did not yet possess. That is the part for which they are begging your forgiveness. When they picked up the envelope, their fingers shook. The seal had already been broken years ago. Someone else had read words meant only for them. Your soulmate felt anger rise inside them, but it quickly turned inward. They asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" The person in the bed began to cry. They confessed that they had been afraid. They believed your love would lead your soulmate away from the life planned for them. They feared changes they could not control. They had judged you without truly knowing you, then protected that judgment with deception. But just as your soulmate demanded to know how far the interference had gone, the patient said something that silenced the entire room. They said, "I wasn't the only one. Do not look away now." That sentence is the reason your soulmate is still in the waiting room instead of already calling you. They walked out of the hospital room carrying the envelope, but the revelation followed them like an echo. Someone else knew. Someone else participated. Someone else watched both of you struggle and chose not to speak. Your soulmate has begun searching through old memories, examining conversations that once seemed harmless. Certain comments now sound rehearsed. Certain coincidences no longer feel accidental. The person they trusted most may not have been acting alone, and the identity of the second person could change everything you thought you understood. Your soulmate returned to the waiting room and sat down because their knees could no longer support them. They held the envelope against their chest and whispered your name. The apology began quietly. "I should have known you would not disappear without a reason." Then another sentence followed. I should have believed what I saw in your eyes. With every admission, a layer of pride fell away. They remembered how you remained kind even while confused. They remembered the times you gave them space without punishing them. They remembered how you protected their dignity when you could have exposed their weakness to others. The contrast became unbearable. You had handled their heart carefully, while they had allowed other people to mishandle yours. Yet the envelope contains more than a plea for understanding. Your soulmate read only the first page before emotion forced them to stop. Your words were not angry. That is what shattered them. You did not accuse them of being cruel. You explained that you sensed fear surrounding the connection and that you did not want to pressure them. You said you were willing to wait for honesty but could not continue fighting invisible battles alone. You asked them to tell you clearly whether the bond mattered, because uncertainty was slowly exhausting your heart. And near the bottom of that page, you wrote a sentence your soulmate has now read at least 7 times. If you choose to walk away, I will respect it, but please let the choice truly be yours. That sentence has become a mirror. They now recognize that the choice was never fully theirs. It was shaped by fear, manipulated information, and the expectations of people who believed they had the right to design another person's life. Still, your soulmate knows they surrendered their voice. No one physically prevented them from finding you. No wall stood between their hand and their phone. They surrendered because obedience felt safer than vulnerability. Tonight, safety has revealed its cost. The life they preserved by losing you never became the life they wanted. Something else happened when they unfolded the second page. A small object slipped from the paper and fell onto the hospital floor. It was something simple, something another person might have thrown away without a thought. But your soulmate recognized it immediately. It was a pressed petal from a flower connected to a private memory between you. You may remember the day, an ordinary moment that became precious because neither of you expected it to matter. Perhaps there was laughter, an unfinished conversation, or a look that lasted 1 second longer than friendship could explain. Your soulmate had believed they were the only one who preserved that memory. Now they know you carried it too. Their composure broke completely. They bent down to retrieve the petal and remained there for several moments, unable to rise. A nurse passing through the hall paused, but your soulmate quietly said they were all right. They were not all right. The discovery had opened a chamber of grief they had kept sealed. They realized that while they were being told your feelings were shallow, you had protected evidence of that moment and placed it inside a letter written with extraordinary care. The people who claimed you did not value the connection had already seen proof that you did. But there is another twist. The petal was not exactly where you left it. Someone had wrapped it in a small piece of paper, and on that paper, a date had been written. It was not the date you composed the letter. It was much more recent. That means someone opened the envelope again after hiding it. Someone returned to your words long after the separation and handled that private memory. Why? What were they searching for? What did they discover? Your soulmate has only begun to ask these questions, and the answer is tied to the second person involved. The person inside the hospital room had tried to confess before tonight. There were signs your soulmate did not understand at the time: interrupted phone calls, invitations to visit, conversations that began seriously but turned toward safer subjects. Guilt kept approaching the surface, then fear pushed it back down. Earlier today, however, something happened that made continued silence impossible. The patient found a second envelope in a locked drawer, one that they had never placed there. It contained copies of messages, dates, and details proving that the interference continued long after the original letter was hidden. Your soulmate does not yet know what those records say. They only know the patient became deeply distressed after reading them and was brought to the hospital for care. That is why your name was spoken before your soulmate arrived. The hidden truth was no longer merely a regret from the past. It had become evidence that someone was still controlling the story. Someone had continued feeding false information to both sides, ensuring that every possible road back to one another appeared closed. Think of the moments when you nearly reached out but stopped because something felt uncertain. Think of the unexpected comments that made you question whether you were welcome. Think of times you heard that your soulmate had moved on, forgotten you, or spoken dismissively of the connection. Within this fictional story, not every message came from the source you believed. Some were altered as they passed through other people. Some were interpretations presented as facts. Some were outright fabrications repeated until they sounded convincing. Your soulmate was receiving a mirrored version of the same story, that you no longer cared, that you had chosen someone else, and that contacting you would only create embarrassment. Yet beneath all that noise, both of you carried the same quiet contradiction. Your heart did not feel finished. Neither did theirs. That does not automatically mean every relationship must be restored, but it does mean the truth deserves to be seen before any final choice is made. A decision made with complete information is freedom. A decision engineered by deception is a cage, even when the door appears open. Your soulmate is sitting in that hospital because tonight they finally saw the bars. They have now opened the unsent messages on their phone. There are more than you would expect. Some were written late at night. Others were composed after hearing a song, passing a familiar place, or dreaming of you so vividly that waking felt like another separation. One message says, "I don't know if I'm allowed to miss you after the way I left." Another reads, "There is something I never told you because I was afraid it would make everything real." But the longest message was written only 3 days ago, before the hospital call, and it contains a confession even the people interfering between you never knew. 3 days ago, your soulmate made a decision. They decided they would find a way to speak to you, whether or not you welcomed the conversation. They planned to offer no excuses and demand no answer. They wanted to tell you that they had never stopped carrying the connection. They also wanted to admit that attempts to move forward had failed, not because no one else possessed value, but because they kept comparing every safe conversation to the truth they felt with you. They understood that comparison was unfair to everyone involved, so they chose to stop pretending. Tonight's revelation did not create their desire to return. It confirmed that the desire had been trying to guide them toward a hidden truth. There is a reason they did not send that message 3 days ago. Just as they were about to press the button, they received a call from someone who seemed to know what they were doing. The caller did not mention you directly. Instead, they warned your soulmate not to reopen an old wound.